All right, this is Kill You Last. I'm Peter Garachi,
I'm Alex Payne.
and we have Alexander Payne coming to us from somewhere. Are you on the East Coast?
I'm in Queens. I'm in a
Oh, okay,
basement slash walk-in in Queens.
because you're a California guy, so I feel
Yeah,
like when I don't see you for a while, that maybe you went back to LA or something. I don't know.
that's better than what other people think. Usually they think I'm dead. So this is great.
Oh, jeez.
No, well, actually, funny you say that because I'm glad that you're alive and well.
Yeah, I was
Because
sick for a very long time.
yeah, we were excited we wanted to have you back, and then so I'm excited, to finally get you back for a second time
Me too.
on the podcast.
I'm
Hell
excited
yeah.
to talk about this movie.
Yeah, so interesting. I ran into a friend of mine the other day who's an actress, really smart, uh, cultured chick, and she's like, "Oh, dude, I listened to the Akira episode. It was so good." She's like, "I really like the guy that you had on for the Akira episode." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I want to get him back on. Like, he's awesome. Like, I'm trying to get him back on." And so you picked Akira. I had never seen, but obviously had heard of. This
Yeah.
movie I had never heard of.
Same.
So I'm very interested, and I enjoyed the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I need you to take the lead on this because I don't know anything about anything with this.
Okay. Just start right now.
Yeah,
Well,
sure. I mean, we'll say the movie and say why you picked it.
The movie is Violent Cop. I picked it because I'm a huge fan of Beats. That's his nickname. His name is Beats Kitano, or I think it's Takeshi Kitano, his real name. But I picked it because Beats is a comedian, and I love anytime a comedian like goes out and branches out and does something different. And essentially, what you're seeing is you're seeing someone like Japanese Robin Williams or Woody Allen basically do a gangster like he does yakuza movies and he does like dirty cop movies, and the line is always blurred.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty crazy thing for someone to do. Like, again, like in America, we don't know who he is, but in Japan, he is through and through comedian. Like, he's on TV, he has a bunch of shows, he's famous. It's like, and he just reinvented himself with this movie.
So
Yeah, I like.
if
I
I have
really
this,
enjoyed it. I
if
had.
go ahead.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I'd never heard of it before, and I looked it up, and I was kind of like, "All right, we'll see." And it hooked me immediately.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him at all, and then I watched some YouTube stuff about him, and yeah, he is like, he's not even like, he's goofier than Woody Allen and Robin Williams. Like, he's like a TV presenter with like really like off the wall.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I like as a comedian who loves like movies, and like I don't want to play like the goofy friend in a movie. Like, I want to play the killer in a movie,
Yeah.
and I was so
Agreed.
inspired seeing this.
That's why I chose this movie. Because every comedian knows the depth that they have within them. And, sometimes it's like, even when you go on stage, people see you and they go, well, is this guy funny? And you're funny. And then you prove that you're funny. And then people go, well, can he really do anything else other than be funny? And you see like actors struggle with it here in America, like Adam Sandler with Uncut Gems, or
Yeah.
even
Right.
Robin Williams did, I think, Insomnia.
Yep.
And it's like Jim Carrey did Number 23, but what this guy did was like you said, he's a really goofy personality. It's like, he was doing basically like Abbott and Costello in Japan,
Huh.
and it's like he just completely takes the narrative of who he is and like reinvents it. And I was like, I'm in love with this guy. He's my favorite person to come out of Japan since Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah. So I'm a huge Kurosawa guy. I'm a huge Toshiro Mifune guy. It reminded me a little bit of Kurosawa, but there's a lot of other like there's like easy like stuff where you're like, oh, it's a Japanese Dirty Harry. It's like
Yeah.
that's a little bit too easy. Like, I think it's like its own thing. It's just kind of funky and like interesting. And I was really impressed. So he had acted before, right?
Yes.
But then he took over as the director of this movie. So this is the first movie he ever directed.
Yeah.
And the thing that caught me was like how well made the movie was. Like the style, the shots,
Yeah.
for a first time director period, like it's a really impressive piece of work.
Well, I always say that, like, when you're a comedian, like in general, you're the writer, the director, the editor. So you kind of already know Like even if you're thinking of a bit in your head, it's kind of like a movie. So you
Yeah.
kind of already have an idea of what you want. And I love him because he's very he's if you watch his later movies, and I recommend you watch his later movies because they only get better. Um, he does a lot of like sparse, like the camera just sits here, kind of like a zoom, like just this is the camera,
Yeah.
and he'll do just a lot of cutting back and forth or have something happen in the frame, and it's like, oh, this is how it should play out. He's like, well, if it plays out that way in a comedy, why can't I make it work for an action movie?
Yeah.
And he just knows instinctively like this will work, this won't work. He works very like I don't think he does more than like 3 takes. He
Yeah.
does like 2 and let's go, and he says if he doesn't get what he wants from an actor, he just changes the camera angle and goes on to the next thing. He's very instinctual, like a comedian is.
It's funny because there's a lot of amazing close up shots of faces, especially his face,
Yeah,
and he's got a great movie face, like amazing.
yeah,
And I'm looking at him, and he's playing like pretty much just an amoral. He's a cop, but he's just basically an amoral killer. And there's really not a lot of explanation. There's not a lot of backstory. He just is like he's almost like he's like a machine. He's just a non-stoppable machine.
yeah,
And I'm looking at his face on the screen, and I'm like, this guy's a comedian. And then I go, oh, if you just take out the trying to be funny part and just leave the empty dark part.
yeah,
Every comedian is this guy.
yeah. That's it.
Amazing,
And,
amazing.
you-
So, how did you find this movie? Like, how did you? What's your like background with
I don't remember the first movie I saw with him. God, what movie did I see with him? Maybe it was Fireworks. I don't know if you guys heard this movie, but he basically has developed this genre or this style of filmmaking, and then later on he got to the point where he was. I mean, it's later on, but it's like 1997. There's this movie called Fireworks, and he got to the point where he figured it out. Like everything you see in this movie, he does better in a later movie.
Yeah.
It was one of the best movies I'd ever seen, and he was funny, and he was just like really talented. And I was like, who is this guy? I've never heard of this guy. I've never heard of this movie, and I really like all world cinema. And then I looked him up, and then I was like, oh, I have to watch everything he's ever done. And I've seen about maybe 5 or 6 of his movies. I've seen this one, the next one, and I mean, for me, this guy is like. This movie is like I don't know what you call it, but I call it like a 1-for-1 script. I don't know if that makes sense, but the idea is like if one thing happens to one character, which is his character Azuma, then it has to happen to the antithesis of his character, which is Kiyoshiro, which is the bad guy who he basically fights in the movie. And it's like there was so much of what I had seen in this movie reminded me of like I feel like this is what the Coens are trying to do in a lot of their movies.
Yeah.
But they can't sometimes get the humor in it. Like I feel like that character, Sugar, and what's that movie? The No Country for Old Men
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
is really this kind of guy that's in this movie, like a gay guy who's really a secret, like super badass killer. And I'm like, I feel like for him though, he's figured it out because he knows the other half of it, which is at some parts it kind of needs to just be played out plain. Like, I don't need to make a big hoorah about it. Like, I think there's a scene where his sister is, like, basically getting raped, and then it's like there is no ultra dramatic music. There's barely any music that plays in the film.
Right.
I mean...
That rape scene is very... it struck me by how no frills, if that's insensitive, I'm sorry, but there was just no frills. It was just literally... a girl getting raped and basically the sounds of the bed moving, and it was pretty fucking dark. Like,
and
but
2 guys are playing foosball in the background.
Right. It's silly,
and that's played for comedy. That's shot exactly like it's.
Yeah,
the way the shot is crafted, that you're basically looking through the guy raping the girl to see the background.
Right,
Yeah.
that shot was
like that's amazing.
yeah.
Like, and again, it's like I feel like also like we've seen everything in movies now.
Yeah.
Every possible scenario has been played out. So the only way to really be shocking anymore is to be like have it be just dead and inhuman. You know what I mean? And that scene is very like it's awful because it's not cinematic at all.
yeah, you just left to sit with it. Like you're in the room there too, and you feel
Yeah,
like
you're
you're
a
just sitting
voyeur.
there, and you're like, oh my god, I want to do something or someone do something, but it just like it never comes. It just like eventually, and then they they get high, and you're like, oh my god, what the hell is going on? This is like you want to leave the scene.
Yeah.
No, you're
That's the weird
frozen.
thing.
You're
Yeah, you're like
frozen.
you're stuck there with inaction, and I love this movie because again, it's like he took over the directing, but he also rewrote a lot of it, and a lot of the movie works like a on some levels like a Shakespearean kind of thing, where it's like his sister is crazy like Ophelia,
Yeah.
and like they have these like ties, their allegiances or whatever, but each one of them breaks their allegiances.
Yeah. There's a lot
Yes.
of double crossing going
They're
on.
not loyal to whoever they're supposed to be loyal to, whether it's him to like the force or the police,
Mm-hmm.
and whether it's the assassin to his boss, basically.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I like, which is like, okay, if it happens with one character, it's gonna happen with the other character, which is eventually Azuma's thrown off the force.
Hmm.
But then if Azuma's thrown off the force, then that guy has to be thrown out of his ordeal too for disobeying. And it's like it seems like such an easy thing to do to be like, oh, if one happens with one character, I'll just write it with the other character. But it's so simple and it's done so well that you kind of forget that that's happening right there. Like I've watched it a couple of times, so I've like noticed the similarities between the scenes. And he does this really smart thing, which is when the film begins, it's basically children beating up an old man.
Right.
Mhm.
And he's basically showing you, it's like the thesis of the movie is at the end when the whole final showdown has happened. The guy goes like, everyone's gone crazy.
Yeah.
And that's like the thesis of the whole movie is like, at the beginning, you're going to see kids beat up an old man. And it's like, there is no blurring of lines between cop or criminal or kid or criminal or prostitute or sick person or whore. It's like it's all just like thrown in together into a big pot, and you're like, well, who is the good guy? Even the rookie at the end is a bad guy. You're like,
Yeah. It's funny.
That was surprising. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the Coen brothers because this is my Rain Man like nerd brain. But the Coen brothers' first movie is Blood Simple.
mm-hmm.
And the line "Blood Simple" comes from the novel Red Harvest, and it's literally about a town where everybody starts killing each other, and a character says like everyone's gone blood simple, meaning like everyone's got murder on the brain. It's making everybody go crazy.
Yep.
And the novel is one of the influences of Yojimbo,
Oh,
which is Kurosawa.
yeah.
And basically every lone guy with maybe no name or a stranger comes to town and takes on the bad guys. That all comes from Yojimbo, and it all really comes from like sort of hard boiled crime fiction from the 1930s. Like you could just as easily this story could just as easily be like an old west town at like
Easily,
the
yeah.
turn of the 20th century as Japan. And Kurosawa, I feel like I love Kurosawa, but they always say that Kurosawa was like the most Americanized Japanese director, so he
Yeah.
wasn't really respected in Japan. It's like I like Chipotle burritos better than real Mexican burritos. Like
Yeah.
I recognize the paradox in that.
Yeah.
When you watch like actual Japanese stuff that's not considered westernized, like it's very strange to westernize. There's a movie I think it's called Samurai Assassin that
Yeah.
stars Kurosawa, and it's just like the story you're watching. I'm like it's like what the fuck is going on here? I can't even keep. It's so like quote unquote foreign, whereas Kurosawa films to a Western viewer are like, all right, even though I don't understand the language, I can make out what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And so this movie, it's like it's very you can tell it's very influenced by Western cinema,
For sure.
but it's also like so Japanese that I
Yeah.
think it's really cool, like kind of melding of the two.
He his the actual like material and the stories they feel much more Western. But like his shot selection, the way he directs it, there's like this famous Japanese director like Ozu
Yeah.
who always like has the person stare at the camera, and he does that a lot in this movie. Like
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite scenes is the interrogation scene where he tries to trick him into picking up the knife,
Yes.
and it's basically him staring at the camera, and he's just like frozen like this, and then that guy looks down and at the knife, and then you cut back and you see the gun behind him, and it's like, oh, okay, like this guy knows what he's doing. He knows Japanese cinema, but he goes like, okay, here's my twist on it.
Yeah.
Like Ozu would just have people talking. He's like, no, let's put some action, something into this.
It made me think of like, I don't know if you see like Bad Lieutenant with Harvey Keitel.
Oh yeah,
It definitely like Tarantino, like Reservoir Dogs was definitely influenced by this movie. Like the empty warehouse.
yep.
Anytime, like the way the warehouse is lit, like that kind of stuff. Like Tarantino definitely looked at this before he made Reservoir Dogs. But I mean, I feel like the Coen Brothers too. Like in Miller's Crossing, there's a scene in a big empty warehouse. It's like I love that use of like a huge space like that, and then you're just like basically watching two people in a giant space. It's just a really interesting like filmmaker's
And again,
choice.
I like it just because of the simple ideas of like the writing of it, which is like, you know, when they're in that interrogation scene, Azuma shoots his own cop. Like he basically shoots someone on his own force. And then later on in another scene, Koichiro's going to shoot one of his guys and tells him, if you leave, I'm going to kill you. He's like, if you run away, you're going to die. But if you leave, I'm going to kill you. So it's literally the same scene. It's just mirrored in a different way.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, oh, this guy is so smart about how he's doing it, but he's just hiding it. Only a comedian could do it. Like, you know, like when you hear like a great joke, you're like, oh, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of that?
Right.
And again, like
Right.
I couldn't stop thinking about Kurosawa. Like, there's a lot of comedy in Kurosawa, and Toshiro Mifune is maybe my favorite actor. And I can't understand a word he's saying, but the physicality, I think that's where a comedic actor really is good. Like, you can be physical in a way that maybe a dramatic actor doesn't even realize that they can do. Like, a lot of his performance in this movie is actually a lot of all of the actors. A lot of it is physical. It's not necessarily language. Like he just found all these faces, and a lot of the faces look like they could have been like out of anime. Like they almost don't even look like real faces. They don't even look human. And it made me think of again with like the Western influence, like the Yakuza. This is about the Yakuza, which, you know, Japanese organized crime. And Kurosawa's first film with Mifune was Drunken Angel.
I love that. That's a
Movie
great
is
film.
the first Yakuza movie.
Yeah.
And the Yakuza really came to prominence after the war in Japan. And I remember like listening to like the commentary on Drunken Angel, and what they said was like the Yakuza dressed in Western clothes.
Yep.
That was a sign of decadence. So it was a sign of decline in Japan that these gangsters were wearing like suits that like men in America wore.
Yeah.
And in this movie, I couldn't stop looking at all the suits the guys were wearing. Like,
And they
the
play
style
baseball.
of everybody is a big part of the movie, and I fucking love that shit. Like it's so, it's such a like it seemed like it would be a minor detail, but it's like it's everything.
A lot of that comes from his childhood. His childhood, he said, when he was growing up, you either wanted to be in the Yakuza or you wanted to play baseball.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was like the only two options you had. Like, you know, he kind of lucked into being a comedian because he wanted to be an engineer. And
It's funny. So there's like a YouTube documentary about him, and he like applied to get a mentorship as a comedian.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that. Like apparently in Japan, it's like you either get like somebody who makes swords to teach you how to make swords, or you get a comedian to teach you how to do comedy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I wish I had a comedy mentor that I could just be like, can you teach me how to do this now? Like, it's so funny that like that sort of like, because that's sort of like the samurai culture where you go find a master, and you're like, you know, master, teach me how to do this thing. So clearly, that's a very different style of comedy than we have in the United States. But
yeah, I think that goes like a bit like the appreciation of like just even the past generation.
yeah,
Like, like, we're so focused on everything that's new. What's the new movie? What's the new this? What's that? And it's like one day you're gonna talk to kids and you're gonna be like, man, you gotta see this. You gotta see Terminator. And I'm like, what the hell's Terminator?
oh, dude, it's already
For
happening.
sure.
It's already
They're gonna look
happening.
at you like, I want to see a new movie. I don't want to see anything like from the past.
Oh, for sure.
Every time one of my favorite movies, like every time I see like on TV a movie that I love, it's always the remake version that I don't want to watch. Do you know what I mean? Like they never play the original Total Recall on TV. They play the fucking Colin Farrell remake, which I have no desire to watch at all.
That's kind of the point of this movie too. Is that again, these children, when the movie starts, they don't care about the law. They don't care that they're beating up an old man. even the new detective at the end, he doesn't care that he's like basically his partner's dead, and he's like, I'm gonna get paid for this. It just gets to the point where like these new group of people that come in, they don't really give a fuck.
Yeah.
You know? Even the guy that replaces the Yakuza boss is just like, you know, he doesn't care that he's taking the other guy that died right in that chair's job. And that lady just is like there going like, what the fuck is going on? Like, man was just murdered in that chair like a day ago, dude. Like, what?
It's so interesting, and I feel like I want Alex, the other Alex, to talk because I'm talking too much. But like, just on this point, there's something to like the system just goes on. It doesn't matter. You're just plugging pieces into the chessboard, but the game continues. So it's so brilliant to end on the shot because like that's such a like banal thing. A woman at a word processor,
right?
Like she's literally that's her job. She's the secretary for the Yakuza boss. You know what I mean? So like to end on that, like that's basically saying that like it's so banal that like life is just gonna go on. It doesn't matter which guy is the Yakuza boss, and it doesn't matter which guy is the crooked cop. Because there's going to be another Yakuza boss and there's going to be another crooked cop.
Yep. And
anyway,
in the movie.
Sure, I've talked too much. So, Alex,
no, you haven't. I mean, you have a lot of background to get through with the, you know. I mean, I like hearing about your experience with something new because it's rare that Peter gets to watch a movie on this podcast that he hasn't seen before. So, I mean, you know. I agree with all this. I thought it was stylistically awesome to watch this movie. I kind of had high expectations going in because when we had you on the first time, I hadn't even heard of Akira, and I was kind of blown away by that movie. Yeah. And so I had high expectations because this was another, you know, Asian movie I hadn't heard of before. I was like, all right, this will be a masterpiece as well. And it was, you know, it met those expectations, which is hard to do. I'm surprised I wasn't let down by this movie. Also, you know, I don't love having to follow subtitles, and by 20 minutes in, I forgot it wasn't in English. It was so well paced. The story was so simple, but compelling enough that I wanted to find out more. I think the thing you're talking about, where it's well balanced and sort of like a mirror image of the things that happen to one character happen to the other character. I think the reason it works so well here and doesn't come across like a Looney Tunes sketch or something where it's like just like a very like because you could do that in so many different forms of entertainment, but the reason it works so well in this movie is you're not aware of it as it's going on unless you're analyzing it on like a meta level.
Yeah.
And the reason you're not aware of it is because it's done cohesively. So basically, when something happens to the cop and then later something happens to the assassin, it makes sense that both of those things happen independently, not just for the sake of it being a mirror image, but also to progress the story that's being told anyway. I think it's very well it's well set up, and everything done in this is purposeful, and that's why you don't have to get so complicated. And I like that this movie just kind of is very straightforward to an extent. Like there's nothing you really have to look into. Like for instance, that scene with the rape. Like there's no like I don't know how much of a deeper meaning there is there. It's just you're watching what is happening, and that's what's happening in front of you. And there's something that I really think is cool to watch about a movie that's not trying to disguise much, you know.
And it's not even that scene of like the woman being raped. It's not like how you see it in Hollywood, which is a woman clawing and screaming, and, "Get away from me! Get away!" It's done in like quiet silence.
Exactly.
So,
no like melancholy like strings or anything.
No, they could just go like, you know, these guys are going to be arguing about how this girl can't feel anything, which was already a problem before that earlier on.
Right.
And like, it's just weird how well he's able to know that like, okay, I don't want a lot of talking in this movie because there's really not a lot of dialogue. And he's just going like, don't worry, the pace of the film is going to be fine. Almost like he would pace an act. He knows like, all right, don't worry. Like, I know how to get to this hour and 30-minute mark. I know what's going to happen. I know like after I do that interrogation scene, which was like, you know, it's not really that much, but just that one little setup in the middle of it with the knife and the gun. And then you get to the scene where they're on the street, and I've watched it like 5 times. And like he stabs him and he tries to stab him, and him just holding on to a knife at the wrong end.
Yeah.
It's one of the most powerful shots I've ever seen.
Oh my
You
god!
feel it. You feel it. You feel your own hand when
He's
you
trying not to die. Like you can see it in his hand, like, I don't want to die. And then he kicks him down, and then he kicks the gun, and it kills that woman. It's like,
Yes.
holy shit. Like, only 2 things have happened. He's grabbed a knife, and then he kicked a gun. But it's more intense than any shootout I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm like hooked in to see this. And then he chases him down the street, and he has to pull the knife out of his fucking hand because it's in there so deep that he can't even just let go. And it's like, oh my God, this guy he has thought about everything so well thought out
Yes.
that it's like, it wasn't like a script. It was like, you can tell he actually saw the movie.
Yeah, and I saw in this YouTube thing, he said the same thing. He's like, he goes, I already have the movie in my head. So
Yeah.
he just has to go, like, get it done. It's like the filming is like, let's just get this over with so I can put together the pieces that I've already created in my head. And I was always conscious that I was watching a movie in the best sense of the word. Like, it was stylized in a way that it like a really great play that's like maybe like 2 sets and a handful of characters. Like, it's not a natural environment. Like, nothing happens like all in somebody's living room. But like a play is restricted in that way where you have to make all the action take place in that way. This was like such a well-oiled machine. I was always conscious that he's sort of the puppet master of this film. But I love that for that reason. Like, I don't need it to be naturalistic or realistic. Like, I wanted... It is. It's almost like a Shakespearean, like, it's like a morality play.
Yeah.
These characters are almost like the same way like Reservoir Dogs, where they have colored names. Like, you could almost give these characters like no names, and they're just like Yakuza, cop, you know, heroin addict. You know, they're archetypes, like, in the best sense of the word. But and it's not just that I haven't seen, like, there's plenty of movies that I haven't seen, but for me to like discover a movie that I've never heard of, and an artist that I've never heard of, and now I'm like, I have to know everything about this guy.
Yeah.
Watch all of his movies. Like, this is a big moment for me, dude. Like, you really gave me a gift.
All right, then. My first thing is to tell both of you guys you have to watch this other movie. It's called Fireworks. It's even better than this movie.
Yeah.
I know that you're like, that's crazy to say, but that movie, he painted a lot of the stuff in it. I mean, he directs it, wrote it, everything. He just figured it all out completely. But he figured out how to really create symbols, I feel like, in this movie. Like, the number one thing I realized when I watched it again, because I watched it again today before we did this, was the idea of bridges. This idea of, like, if you watch the movie again, the first shot is of, I believe it's like after he beats that kid up, he comes across a bridge.
Yeah.
And then the last shot is the cop going across the bridge after he does after he takes the money. And I mean, not the last shot, but the shot before the last one, when he goes to see the Yakuza. And then, if you remember, in the middle of the movie, he goes to visit a guy after a drug dealer's killed, and he passes the killer on the bridge.
Yeah.
It's basically about this idea of the union of, like, these people are, like, they meet each other all the time. They pass each other all the time.
Yeah.
Even earlier on, you see kids throwing, like, trash off of the bridge at a guy on a barge boat. And it's this idea of, like, he has this idea of, like, symbiotic relationships, which is, like, there's no difference between a Yakuza. There's no difference between a cop. There's no difference between a kid. It's like they're all at just different stages, and they collide.
Yeah, and the guy's hanging from the bridge. The guy commits suicide.
Yeah.
And that opening scene reminds me of Clockwork Orange. Like, in Clockwork Orange, they kill a homeless guy underneath a bridge. And I'm sure that's not by accident that the movie starts with a bunch of kids killing a guy under a bridge. It's funny. We don't have a ton of time, but, like, I couldn't watch this movie without... But I think we've kind of answered this question. Like, it made me think of, like, cops and, like, this debate that's happening with police today. And I'm almost like, are people surprised that cops are also corrupt and can be bad dudes? Or, like, that, you know, that there's problems with the police? Like, this is... It's very, like, America-centric to think that, like, You know what I mean?
There
Like
is a good guy.
even
Yeah.
people who hate America put America
Cops and
first.
robbers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people who hate America like are obsessed with America, so they think that like if you really think like America invented bad cops, like it's part of, like you said, it's like it's part of the system will continue. Whether you replace the one bad guy with another bad guy, the system kind of goes on in a way that's like it's sort of it's a cynical thing, but it's also kind of an adult thing to just accept that too.
Yeah, it deals with the morality of like, like none of these people are really quote unquote good people, and none of them are really bad people. Like he doesn't really judge them.
But they're all crazy.
They're all crazy. Like
Yeah.
everything they do is insane, but there are no like good people in this movie. Like even the lady that's just typing, she works, she knows where she works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She went back the next day.
Yeah.
So even if something happens to her and she gets involved, it's like we're all culpable in this system. Like even the lady that didn't know where her son went when he went to go beat up a homeless dude, it's like even that lady is a part of this.
Right.
I also was like, what was she like listening in like through the door when her son's getting the shit kicked out of him?
Yeah,
By
I was
the
wondering
cop?
about that. Yeah.
And also too, like imagine the secretary, like she goes home and tells her boyfriend like how was work today? Well,
My boss got
the good
shot.
news is I still have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You made me think of one thing, Alex. It was really funny because you said that Beats like either wanted to be Yakuza or he wanted to be a baseball player, and we were talking about how Yakuza dress.
Yeah.
When he basically is off the force, he dresses differently,
Yeah.
and he goes to watch a baseball game.
Yep.
So he's a civilian, dresses a civilian watching baseball. I'm sure that wasn't by accident either. You know?
No, that seemed very personal.
Yeah,
After
very
hearing
personal.
that. Yeah.
Him going to the museum too is also he's an artist as well. He actually paints. And when you guys watch Fireworks, because I know you will, you'll see his paintings
Absolutely.
in the film. And I would also say if you can watch his other movie, it's called A Boiling Point. He's
Yeah.
barely in it. He's not in it that much. But I will tell you to watch it just to see the different character that he plays. Like in Fireworks in this film, he's very silent. And he's almost like, if I was going to compare these guys, I would say like, Jackie Chan is like the new Buster Keaton. And this guy is like a Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd type, where he can just like make his face the whole star of the show.
Yeah.
And the other film, he does this weird thing. I don't know if you pay attention, but like his blinking is like this. But by the time 10 years later, he figures out how to just make himself interesting by just blinking like this. And it's like,
right.
this guy's a genius. Like, of course he's a comedian because he knows every single thing on your face can be used to make you interesting.
Right.
It's on another level. Yeah. And it's
facial
just
facial expressions are so underrated and can be so subtle and make such a difference, especially, I mean, that's one of the first things you learn in stand up, I feel like. Go ahead.
And also like a lot of like, I don't love necessarily comedy movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would rather watch a gangster movie or a bank robber movie, whatever. But like when comedy's done well in a movie that's not really selling you the comedy, it's not like just goofy shit. It's like stuff that it can be just the way the camera moves or the way a character enters or exits.
Like
a scene.
Goodfellas is really good with that.
Yeah,
Goodfellas is hilarious, but it's not. There's some scenes that are so fucking funny in Goodfellas. Like, the scene with where Ray Liotta's about to beat the shit out of the guy across the street. Like when he walks
the gun.
Right before he exits the car, he checks his hair. And he goes like this, and then he beats the shit. Like that little subtle. I don't know who did that. If that was Martin or if that was his decision, Liotta's decision. But that's hilarious to keep that in.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good example of where you're talking about. We have less than a minute before this room closes. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't realize how fast 40 minutes was. We could extend this, but I mean, I honestly kind of like a short but sweet take on this.
Great, Alex. Thanks so much for coming back.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
For introducing us to this whole other world that I didn't know about that I can't wait to investigate more.
Please.
Yeah, I want to make sure you have a chance to plug anything you want to plug. Hopefully, we don't get cut off.
Uninspired TV and watch his movie Fireworks. Beats
Boom.
Takashi. Yeah, Beats Kitano.
Easy.
Fireworks. Watch
Got
Fireworks.
it. Watch Fireworks and Uninspired TV. We'll link all your shit on YouTube and on Spotify and iTunes, all that shit. Yeah, thanks again, man. And do you feel like you talked about everything you want to talk about here, or do you want to?
Oh yeah, watch the movie. Just watch the movie.
Yes, I feel like for our listeners, just watch this movie, and then obviously we'll all watch Fireworks. But yeah, take it from us. I'm sure most people listening to this haven't seen it yet. Definitely worth the watch. It's an hour and 45 minutes. It breezes by. It's so good.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right. Peace out, everyone. Bye, guys.